Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Purdy Insurance. Visit Purdy Insurance on Market Street in Sunbury or visit online at purdyinsurance.com.
Anytime you want to go out and get really terrific analysis of something, you turn to somebody like Rich Scarcella from the Reading Eagle. Rich, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us.
Steve, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Rich, let's start with this. It's a game that featured plenty of ups and downs. So, as you watched it during the game, James Franklin will talk about the standard is the standard. And I know that afterward he talked about the standard. Some of the players did as well. So, in what areas does he feel or the players feel, and then your observation, where they didn't meet a standard on Saturday?
Well, let's start with the defense, which has played superbly all season. The breakdowns on the first two touchdown passes that Indiana threw, Brendan Sorsby. There was a breakdown. Whether it was communication, whether it was a blown assignment, whatever. You haven't seen that all year, and I'm sure that's eating alive at one defensive coordinator named Manny Diaz, and also Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter. I'm sure that's bothering them, and I'm sure it's bothering the players. I like to say, I know James, said nobody wants to hear it, but I think part of it is it was an emotional letdown. There's no doubt about that in my mind. You lose focus, you lose concentration, and those things happen. Offensively, I think they've got to run the ball, find a way to run the ball in a more productive manner. I get asked, of course, since Nick Singleton is from Berks County, the Reading area, what's wrong with Singleton? Is he getting enough carries? Or, what's wrong with the running game? Here's the number, Steve, that may knock your socks off, but I don't think – well, it won't you because you're on top of everything. Against Illinois, Northwestern, and Indiana, the three worst rushing defenses in the Big Ten, Penn State averaged 3.5 yards a carry.
Right.
That has to be better. What are the reasons behind that? We've talked about, is it because the lack of explosive plays in the passing game, defense is crowding the box, so on and so forth. But that has to change.
There's no question it has to change along the way, because those are games where you expected Penn State to reasonably – they could get between 180 and 220 with the running backs they have, and they did not get to those level in any one of those three games along the way. So now let's flip the switch for a moment. And in flipping the switch, that would be – right, because they've been in this spot before over the years and have not won this game. Right? Well, they won the game.
Yeah.
So let's discuss, before we get to other parts, how they won the game. And to me, they do a lot of work on situational football. So the end of the first half, they win the final 4 minutes 10-0, including a takeaway, a field goal. Fifth time in 8 games they come out, they start the second half with a touchdown drive. So that's 17. All right. You get to the last few minutes of the game, and they get quick change. They talk about that all the time. They gave up 3. They then go through the drive. Think about how the drive started. The 2 Allen plays, okay? And then they get the man. Then you get the lead. You want your defense to protect. They get the takeaway and the 2 points. Oh, it's not done yet. It's going to be an onside kick. They get it because they executed it right. Then they close out with a first down, so they closed it out on their terms. Those are all situations that they work on, and they checked all those boxes when they needed to. Does that tell you anything? Am I wrong about anything I said, by the way?
No, you're not wrong at all. They did things in those last – after Drew Aller's interception, he admits wrong play. He committed the cardinal sin of a quarterback, throwing the ball late over the middle, under pressure. But from that point on, they did everything right. Everything. You hit it on the head, Steve. The 2 plays to Catron, the run and a pass, gained 21 yards, and it sets up the slot fade to Keandre Lambert-Smith, who had a step on the defender, and Drew Aller made a perfect pass. Yeah, I mean that, and I wrote, and I noticed some other people on the beat wrote, this could be the turning point, the tipping point, however you want to put it, for the Penn State offense for Drew Aller going forward. I will go back to a play in the first half, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I thought there was a play where he improvised, and he hasn't done a lot of improvisation in the pass game. He rolled left, and he threw to Nick Singleton, who was wide open down the middle for a 28-yard gain.
Huge play.
And I think that set up a score. And I thought that was a big step forward for Drew. And I think I think also, as Keandre Lambert-Smith said after the game, the fact that Drew has thrown his first interception might not be the worst thing in the world. He threw it, and the world didn't end. So maybe there's a little bit of pressure taken off. Maybe, whether it's him, whether it's play calling, whatever, hey, maybe we could take a few more chances. And if he throws an interception, so be it. I don't know. That was, only Drew and the coaches know that for sure.
Yeah, one of the tougher things I've found over the years, whether it's football or basketball, is where you're in the spot where you're the, quote, prohibitive favorite, and everybody knows you are, is when you bring losing into the equation. Mm-hmm. How do you react? Well, let's face it, the game's 24-24. You brought losing into the equation, and then what did your evaluation of the reaction when losing was brought into the equation because they won by 9?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like you mentioned, like I said, the last 3 minutes of the game, they did everything correctly, perfectly. From the first 2 plays to Allen, the touchdown pass, and then you're right. The defense getting a 3 and out. We can argue that Tom Allen played it a little conservatively, but they had success running the football in the second half. So, but defense got the stop, forced a field goal, and then everything went Penn State's way. Not that they created their own breaks, and tonight Dennis Sutton's play was capped it all.
Something I had talked about when I went around speaking to groups, when people would ask me about the team, I'm not going to tell them that, hey, they're awesome and incredible here, here, and here. But I talk about personnel and what they have so people know who to watch for mostly. And I said, to me, it was the deepest team that I've seen here since 2008. Mm-hmm. When you see the various guys who had to play in the game, Drew Shelton had to play a lot at right tackle. Iowanis had to fill in. Tonight, Dennis Sutton. Is that it? What kind of role is depth playing with this football team right now?
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, I think many of you, me, and many others who have covered the team for a long time, this is a really deep team. And you lose a Chop Robinson, you lose a Caden Wallace during the game, you lose a Trey Wallace during the game. Mm-hmm. You have, you lost Landon Tangwell right before camp. These are all starters. We're not talking about second team or third team. We're talking about starters. And Penn State has managed to make up for those losses, not just in the first 7 games, but also on Saturday. Drew Shelton was able to rely on the experience he got last year playing in those last 5 games. We saw Jameel Lyons get more snaps than he has. He's a true freshman. That's only going to help him going forward. JB Nelson came back, and Ione got he's gotten some good reps. It's only going to help him going forward. I think the depth on this team is as good as I can remember.
When you look at the running game, and you were mentioned that people have asked you because Nick Singleton's from your area about it. Mm-hmm. Is it a question of getting a second-level block, or is it even a question maybe of, okay, they're getting through, but they've got that one last tackler to beat? What are you seeing on a consistent basis?
Oh, man. I see not a ton of room inside for either Singleton or Allen. I have seen, I don't know, I saw maybe one or two runs Saturday that Nick came, well, including the kickoff return, it was multiple. One tackle away from going all the way. I think he had a run like that, too. I can't remember what run it was. I think it was early in the game on Saturday. You just sometimes you feel like it's a matter of time before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's nothing wrong with Katron Allen or Nick Singleton. Katron ran really, really well Saturday.
Yes, he did.
Nick ran well in spots, and then the kickoff return. I mean, these two guys, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I just think, for some reason, Steve, I just don't think there's as much room to run as there was last year. And, the only change on the offensive line is really Juice Scruggs is in the NFL. And, there's only one new starter. So, I can't, I'm not smart enough to say they're not doing this right. They're doing this wrong, whatever. But I just know it just feels like there's just not as much room, not as many cracks as there were last year.
In the answer, you a couple of times referenced Nicholas Singleton's kickoff return of 50 yards. Mm-hmm. What have you seen in the improvement of special teams as time has gone, and what kind of difference can it make in the stretch run if it continues to make those incremental improvements? Everybody's been focused on the issues on offense. The special teams has made to me, probably has made the biggest in-season improvement of the three segments of the game. And Saturday was a very good day, except the blocking in the back penalty, wiping out Daquan Hardy's long punt return for a touchdown, which would have been really something. But I've seen you can see improvement. I think both kickers. I mean, okay, Alex Felkins missed a 51-yard field goal. I'll never hammer somebody for that. But he made a 50-yard field goal. Riley Thompson averaged 49 yards a punt. They got a turnover. KJ Winston recovered a muff punt. Nick Singleton's 50-yard return, kickoff return. So I think the special teams, with the exception of the penalty on Hardy's return, had a very good day. In fact, I'll point something out quickly about the Falcons field goal he made. Remember, he made it after a penalty moved them back.
Yeah,
and and again, to his credit, mentally strong enough to say, "So what?" And I'll kick it from 50. I mean, because it was a 10-yard penalty, so he kicked it from 10 yards further back.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that gave them the halftime lead.
Yeah,
and gave them a little bit of momentum going into the locker room. And we talked about the the final eight and the first eight, or final four and the first four, the middle eight. And they've done a really good job with that. But I really, you look at the NFL, Steve, and this is I'm comparing. Like, look at yesterday. How do you explain Denver beating Kansas City badly, really badly?
Yeah.
How do you, or the Cowboys just crushing the Rams, or I'm trying to think of another score and then you look. Denver. Let's stick with Denver. Denver gave up 70 points to Miami this season and shut down Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. It's, football, it's funny, and I think especially in college when you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds or whatever, however you want to put it, it was only natural they weren't going to be emotionally up for that game on Saturday. That's taking nothing away from Indiana. Indiana played a really physical, tough, hard game.
Yeah.
Right. But there were mental mistakes made by Penn State that allowed it to be a contest. There's no question about that. And that might have been their hiccup, and they were able to survive it.
And again, how do you explain, for example, that Detroit can win on opening night over Kansas City, but get blown out by Baltimore? I mean,
Right.
it's just like on the pro level, there's certain things that happen too. You sit back and go, really? And look, last year, forgotten in all of the greatness of Georgia last year was the fact that 5 minutes to go at Missouri, they're losing.
Mm-hmm.
And they won the game. Everybody forgot about that game. Even in the history of Penn State, 94, everybody remembers being down 21-0 in Illinois. But people forget in 86, they played this exact same game with Cincinnati and needed a late touchdown. And then got a safety to win the game in a season where you won at Alabama, won at Notre Dame, and beat Miami. I mean, these games, you do have this game during the season.
Yes.
Everybody does.
Yeah. And Georgia had one even earlier in this season.
Yep.
Against was it against Kentucky?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, thank you. But no, you're exactly right. It's funny you said that because that's exactly what was going through my mind in the second half Saturday was the Cincinnati game in '86. I was thinking of the same thing. And you do have these games, and you're able to survive them, and you learn from them, and you move on. And now you know what you did wrong. And and now you're going down to Maryland, where a lot of the players on the Penn State roster are from, playing a team that's hurting a little bit. But Penn State expects a battle, and I think mentally they're going to be ready for the rest of the season. Because
I think for Maryland, this is their line in the sand game. That's how I'm looking at it with them. But you're right. That's a big game for them coming up. And they know what's on the horizon after that. But history's a great teacher. It tells you a lot. Now it's a question of what do you do with the future. Right.
And I think, I hate to use this phrase because it's overused as a trap game. And if Maryland, let's say if Maryland had been last week and not this week, that might have been a problem. That might have been a real problem. If you were going at Ohio State and then at Maryland, but you didn't. That's what the schedule is. The schedule, and I do think mentally, Penn State will be a lot sharper this Saturday at Maryland.
Rich, it is always a pleasure. You did this last minute. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the great work.
Anytime, Steve. You can ask me anytime. Thanks.
The outstanding Rich Scarcella.